have a 4 wide orange coloured plate. Hi and welcome to Sven's Bricks. My name is Sven and this is another episode of converting speed champions from 6 to 8 wide. Behind me here you can see I have a growing collection of 8 stud wide cars, but it's lacking a little bit in colour, I think. So the next one that I will be moving on to is the Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 race car. So this one's been requested a couple of times actually already, and looking at the original car, I think we can definitely improve on this one by widening it. It comes in a very nice blue colour though, so I may need to order some parts. But yeah, let's get cracking and see how we do. So I picked this one up second hand. As you can see, it's missing a couple of plates at the front here, which I may need to order some more of. But otherwise I believe that the model is complete. There's a little bit of dust here, so I can use my hoover to sort that out. Check my other video for tips about that one. I actually managed to pick up a sticker sheet for this in advance quite a few weeks ago because I saw it going cheap here in Sweden. Because the main sticker that I think we're going to need to do something about are these ones at the front here, because we're going to want to keep the Chevrolet logo in the middle and obviously push the lights out. So I'm hoping that just being able to cut these stickers here in half and moving the lights to the left and keeping the Chevrolet logo in the middle will fix that. But we'll see a bit how we get on. The stickers may prove a challenge in other places as well, such as the Camaro sticker on the back here. And maybe the stickers on the side, but I think we'll probably get away with those just like we did with the AMG GT3. So I'm going to start pulling this apart. So I've managed to split this into 4 parts. I managed to lift the back off without any problem at all. We've then got the main body of the car, and then we've also got the front here, which I managed to detach. Those blue bits actually sit just in here. So I left those on to remind me about where they go. And then I also just pulled the wheels off in normal fashion, and the wheels have these really nice sort of tyre caps. I think it's the first time I've got these, so they look really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that on the completed model. So I've actually run out of the 6 stud wide chassis pieces that are like this, that I've used in some of the previous conversions. So I'm going to try this one again that I used for the F40. The main difference here really is that where the minifigure sits is higher, or will be higher. So there may be an issue with fitting the minifig in at the end. That's really the biggest trouble that I see using this piece. Otherwise, I actually prefer using this piece because you can then fit 2 figures into the car. With this one, you can only fit 1, and then it's obviously right in the center of the car, which doesn't look very realistic. So I'm going to give this one a go for this build, and I'm going to see how we get on. I've done the usual of just replacing these grey parts here with 1x2 hold bricks, and then a plate underneath to hold the wheels on. And then those are just going to sit on the chassis, I believe, like this. The back wheels may go back a stud. I haven't figured that part out just yet, but the front at least will sit like this. So I was able to detach the very front section of the car just there. So I pulled it off there. So I'm just going to start finding 4 wide parts to replace these 2 wide parts in order to put together a wider front section. Okay, so what I've ended up with is that I've extended the width of this. So I've put in a 4x long here. I've put in a second of the studs on the side pieces there. And I've put in a second of these modified plates here. And then that will sit there on the car. So in the front here on this one, I've put in a plate and a tile in the middle between these 2 sloped parts. I'll sort the stickers out a bit later. And then I've put in these 2 sloped grey pieces here in order to extend the width of the bottom part of the bumper there. I'll replace this all of this with black because the original part looked like this. But for now I'm going to go with those colours because that's what I have available to me. Now the original design came with one of these 2x6 rounded plates, and I don't believe that they make these 8 wide. But looking at the actual car, this doesn't have a round piece there. It actually has more angular pieces. So I've gone with this instead. just one of these modified plates in the middle and then two of these angled plates here. I think it's actually a bit closer to the real car, so I'm pretty happy with this, at least for now. That's going to sit just on there, and then the bumper piece is going to go onto the front. Moving on to the next section, I'm going to begin by removing the roll bar, and then I'm going to remove the wheel arches and start to find parts to extend the width in the middle here. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to remove this grey plate here because it's quite interlocked, and that's what's stopping me from pulling it apart very straightforwardly. So I'm going to replace that with a yellow plate because you can't see this anyway. And then I've moved these little corner plates from here, and I've moved them out to the edges of the yellow plate, and I've put in a little 2x1 plate in the middle there to extend the width. So I now need to find a second one of these and place those here. So in order to move the arches, I actually need to replace this piece, which I've done here with a light grey instead in a 6 wide, because the arches don't sit on here, they sit on or underneath this plate here. So I should now be able to lift these off. I'm just going to remove a couple of plates off the top here, and I can then take these off and attach them underneath the grey plate. So that ends up looking like this. These are the pieces that I pulled off the top, and they should just go back on here. So I think at this stage I'm actually going to place this onto the front of the car here, because the next part will be to find a couple of blue pieces to fill in the gaps here, and then also widen this middle section here, which sits in here. So before we're able to start work on the side properly, we need to address this big gap here. And this gap is being caused by, first of all, the one extra stud that we have going forwards here, because we're extending the length of the car by 2 studs as well as the width by 2 studs. And the reason that there's a gap here is because all of that sat on this part here. So I'm going to need to find a 6 long plate to replace this 4 long plate here, and a 4 long plate to replace this 2 long plate here, and then move these studs out. Okay, that's done. It hasn't disappeared completely, however, and that's because the actual side pieces from the original design had these little 1x bracket studs on the side pieces there, and that sat in there like that. So because we're extending the length, I'm going to replace that. I'm going to replace that with these ones. So one on either side. So this piece will go completely, and that piece will be put in its place instead. Okay, and this is the result of that. I think it might look a bit nicer with a double cheese plate here, and I may change the stickers, but that's working at least for now. The only issue is that these are loose because they're 5 long and they're only attached on that single stud at the end there. So just to fix that issue for now at least, I'm just going to put one of those in there and one in there, which has made that nice and solid. So these black pieces now need to be moved over here. So far so good. The side of the car was considerably easier than with the F40. As mentioned, I'm going to have a look at these parts here and the stickers and may improve upon the way that it looks at the moment. But for now at least, I think that's good enough to move on to the back. Before we do move on to the back though, let's just take a note that there's quite a few pieces here that I'm not replacing. These modified blue tiles here are actually not needed, so that was nice and easy. And this back section here will be converted into 2 studs wider in order to sit here before I move this section here. The back section is actually very interlocked, much like the front section, so it's not quite as simple as just pulling the wheel arches off. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to add one of these 2x slopes here in order to extend the width of this one. I'm then able to lift this side piece off here and put that there in order to just sort of remember where it goes. And then this back section just comes off like that. From this point, I should then be able to lift off this tile, and then I should be able to move the wheel arch. So I'll just show you there briefly, in case you're following along how I've done that. So as mentioned, I've added the 2 wide slope in there, and I've then lifted the wheel arches off of this piece and added them onto here, and I've put these on top. I now need to replicate this. So I've actually managed to create this entirely from scratch without using any of the original pieces, because it was easy to show you that way. So I've literally just found pieces to replace the 4 wide and 6 wide versions with 6 wide and 8 wide versions of those plates underneath there. And for the white modified tile there, I've actually used the 2 blue ones from the other side of the original build to replace that there. And then I've put on a 4 wide plate on top there. So I'm going to find a 6 stud wide 2x brick, because that will sit in underneath these pieces. And then I'm going to need to find another one of these hinged parts and a second window piece here, as well as a couple of extra of these cheese slopes and a 6 long black plate here. So this is what I ended up with. I've just added the extra window and a longer brick underneath there. And then when you lift these pieces off now, that one and that one. So I didn't have any more of these in grey, so I just added 2 in blue instead in order to keep the colour scheme. That one then just goes in there, and these go back on, and we have a nice looking back window in place. So I'm going to move on to the very rear section of the car. This looks relatively straightforward. The only bit that might be a bit of a challenge here is that this here is a studs on the side piece, and I don't believe they make these wider. So I'm going to have to find a way around that, but otherwise it should just be a case of adding extra pieces and replacing pieces with 2 stud wider or 2 stud longer pieces. So I'm going to move on to that section now. So that's sort of the underside done there. So if you imagine that this is 8 stud wide, that was there, and I've converted the bottom part only here. So this piece was white, but I had 2 blue ones from the original build, so I've added 2 blue ones in instead, and I've extended the length of this tile, and then I've replaced the 4 by yellow piece there with a 6, and then this one will sit on there and attach to this piece, which is the next part. Now, to overcome the challenge of this piece being 6 wide, I've used 3 of these 2x2 studs on the side pieces here, which enables me to put these on there, but it doesn't enable me to put these cheese slopes on. So to work around that, I can simply just put in a 1x2 plate underneath here, like so, and then I can move my cheese slope over. So this is then the completed back end. I've added in a couple of the black cheese slopes there in order to extend the sort of spoiler at the back there. And on the back here I've also added 1x1 plates just to fill in what was a gap there otherwise, because I haven't extended the width of this studs on the side bracket piece. It slides into a gap in between the white and the blue there. So let's see if I can do this one-handed. Should just... there we are. We have a completed back end. The original model was actually as ugly, dare I say, as this, but perhaps because it was a smaller scale it wasn't as noticeable. And I do notice that the real car has a proper spoiler on it, so it may be that I revisit that a bit later. So this feels like a pretty good place to leave the build for now. I'm going to order some parts from Bricklink, and then I'm also going to make a decision on whether this is going to be a racing version of the Camaro ZL1 or whether I go with just the street version. I do personally prefer street versions over racing versions because I'm not particularly into car racing, even though I like cars. So we'll see, but I need to spend a bit of time at the front here with different blue slopes of different varieties. I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the roll cage. I've kind of started a little bit like that. And yeah, I basically need to wait for some parts to arrive before I can complete the model. But that's it for now, and I'll come back to you once my Bricklink order has arrived. So here we have the completed model. After my Bricklink orders have arrived, I've made some changes. So at the front here, I've removed the black stickered parts that were around the edges here, and the stickered part that it was at the front here. That's because I'm going to go for a street version of the car, and the street version has a much smaller black area on the hood. So for the stickers on the front, what I've done is I've put on brand new stickers and I've cut them in half in order to have the logo in the middle and to have the headlights on the far left and the far right. And then for these black lines that the original car has, I've actually used the sort of the black mark that all of these stickers have. So I've actually just cut just a couple of millimeters thick black line from the sticker sheet, and I've added it in between there in order to get a relatively authentic look compared with the real car. I then also cut this sticker. So I had two of these. One of them I poached from the original build, managed to transfer it across, and the other one I cut it, and that you can just about see a seam there where the two stickers meet. But that came out pretty good. The shape is not right for that grille section, but I think this is pretty close. I'm quite pleased with the way that the front came out, and I think it's pretty close to the real car. So that's good. I've added a 1x6 tile to the roof here. Interior wise, I actually put in a couple of jumpers underneath the driver, and that's in order for him to sit to one side, so it's a bit more realistic. The cockpit won't really fit two figures. I kind of tried, and with a bit of squishing you can get two figures in, but it's not ideal really. But at least it looks like you can fit two figures in, and that's the important thing for me because he sits on the left hand side of the car. So that's nice. And then I've given him a little seat there with a headrest, and on the other side there I've put in a bit of an instrument panel for him. And then I've filled in the back here using just a sloped part from the original car, and I've kept a part of the roll cage in there. Why not? I've decided to take the roll cage out completely from the actual cockpit because I've decided to go with a street version of the car. So of course you could add the racing stickers to this if you wanted to, but I personally prefer a clean look like this. On the back here I reapplied these stickers. I put brand new ones on, and I put them right up against the edge of this sloped part so that from a distance at least it kind of looks like a completed back window, which is nice. And then I also replaced all of these black tiles here with blue ones. So very straightforward, literally just a colour swap on those just to clean up the look of the back end. And then I think the only other thing that I've changed here is that on the bottom here I decided that I did want to have the exhausts like the real car has. So in order to do that I had to remove a couple of parts from the bottom, and I just replaced them with plates, upside down plates, which enabled me to stick two of these binocular pieces in, which give it a pretty perfect rear end if you compare it with the real car as well. Finally, I removed the stickers from the side, as I've mentioned, and I just added in these cheese slopes here. I think it gives it a bit of a cleaner look. It might look even cleaner with a 2x4 tile there rather than two 1x4 tiles. But I've gone with 1x4s as that's what I have. And I think it looks perfectly good. So I think that's pretty much it for this model. I would say that this is another successful conversion. I did look a little bit at changing the front end because it's not exactly like the front of the real car. But it's a bit challenging though, because this piece here really it's got a very different shape, the grille, from the original car. So I think it would probably need completely reworking in order to get that more accurate. But I think I'm happy, at least for now, to call it a day on this one. I did even actually look at swapping these caps for alloys, the alloy pieces that you can put in there to make it more like the street car, because of course the street car doesn't have Camaro in big letters on the tyres. But I just think it looks so cool that I decided to keep it there. Oh yes, and I did add a little black sill along the bottom here, a little black lip. Originally I put them in there, from this angle it looks good, but from this angle you can see the studs. So I thought that's no good that you can see the studs there, and I wasn't very happy with that. But then I realized that actually the Koenigsegg has that. You can see the studs there. So I decided that it was good enough, and it was better to have a black sill there showing some studs like the real car has, rather than not have the black sill there at all. So to do that, I just literally lifted off the sides and replaced the plate with these studs on the side bracket pieces. And I also just turned these plates around. They said Chevrolet on them, and I don't think that the street version has that on the side. I think that's just if you're doing a racing version. So it was a bit sad to turn them around because it's a nice print, but I'm going for the street version, which is a nice clean look. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you think of the conversion, whether you have any thoughts on ways that I could improve upon it. Let me know if you have requests for other builds I can convert. And thank you for watching. Drop me a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, and bye for now.